The Civil Rights Movement was a pivotal time period in American history. From the 1950s to the 1960s, the Civil Rights Movement took hold of thousands of people across the United States. There were constant debates of the rights of African Americans being undermined and continuing the white majority in superiority. Various political leaders and civil rights activists made major improvements in making African American rights equal to whites. Malcolm X's controversial view on civil and human rights helped African Americans during the Civil Rights Movement raise their self-esteem and their will to be considered equal. Malcolm Little, son of Louise and Earl Little, was born on May 19, 1925 in Omaha, Nebraska. Living as a small child, Malcolm faced the realities of the life of African Americans in the United States. His father, Reverend Earl Little, was a civil rights activist and Baptist minister. He received various death threats from the white supremacist organization Black Legion and the Ku Klux Klan. Malcolm X dropped out of school as an 8th grader because his teacher said he should be a carpenter instead of a lawyer. He moved and lived with his half-sister Ella in the Roxbury part of Boston, where he was involved in various criminal acts as a young teenager. In 1946, Malcolm X was arrested on a burglary charge. He used his time in prison to continue and finish his education. Malcolm Little's brother, Reginald, would often visit Malcolm and talk about his recent conversion to the Muslim religion. Then, in 1948, both Malcolm X and Reginald were incarcerated to the Norfolk prison colony in Massachusetts. Malcolm began studying the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, the Nation of Islam leader. After being released from prison, Malcolm X met with Elijah Muhammad and immediately got to work spreading the Nation of Islam message and became a big name in the media. Malcolm X reached out to various well-known political figures, scholars, activists, and even athletes during his time. Elijah Muhammad made him second in command and the nation representative. With that title, Malcolm X helped the nation claim over 500,000 memberships. The influence of the messages that he spread led to this dramatic increase. He finally decided to leave the NOI, and in 1964 he formed the Muslim Mosque Inc. Malcolm X's messages were considered controversial because they were not what the majority expected. An example is Malcolm X's wish to start rifle clubs. According to him, this was not a controversial topic because if the whites were in the position the blacks were in, they would start a rifle club. To the majority, it was controversial due to its potential to be dangerous. Malcolm X was unlike Martin Luther King Jr., a fellow civil rights activist. Although they disagreed on almost everything and preached polar opposites, they both knew that they had the knowledge and power to make a change and to find equality for all African Americans. Malcolm X preached hatred, separatism, and violence. For example, Malcolm X's Ballad of the Bullet speech.
In the political world body, it has enabled the dark nations to band together and use the strength of their ballots to force the wealthy nations, which are the white nations, into giving more independence to other nations who are still under their jurisdiction. You and I have to look at this and understand this, that the ballot is as powerful as the bullet.
Then, that same April of 1964, Malcolm went to Mecca. This pilgrimage allowed Malcolm X to preach to various races and cultures instead of just one. He experienced a second conversion and embraced the Sunni Islam, where he undertook the Muslim name El-Hajj Malik el-Shabazz. Returning to the United States, Malcolm X felt that Orthodox Islam gave him the insight to realize that black men and white men could be brothers, and white women and black women could be sisters. In 1965, Malcolm X's home in New York, where he lived with his wife Betty and their 4 children, was firebombed. Fortunate enough, the family was able to escape. A week later, however, Malcolm X was speaking in Manhattan's Audubon Ballroom and was killed.
Malcolm, and I remember him saying, "Stay calm, stay cool," and I remember hearing over my right shoulder the gunfire. And then Malcolm's hand was up like that, still in the greeting and still exhorting everybody to stay calm, when he fell backwards in a dead faint. He just slumped.
3 gunmen rushed in and onto the stage and shot him 15 times at point-blank range. He was transferred to New York's Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. He was dead upon his arrival. It was February 21st, 1965, and he was 39 years old. The suspected assassins were Talmadge Hayer, Norman 3X Butler, and Thomas 15X Johnson. All men were members of the Nation of Islam. Hayer was arrested on a life sentence and was declined parole 16 times before finally being released in 2010. The other 2 men were never in prison. Malcolm X created a legacy that still stands today. His desire for black liberation from the political status quo of the 1960s helped shape the foundation for equal rights for African Americans as others built on it. After his death, black activists used Malcolm X's teachings to begin their own movements like the Black Power movement. Can his messages be revived in this century? There have been debates about whether white police officers are mistreating African Americans in today's society. Tragic events have occurred in the past few years.
Unarmed 18-year-old killed by police. Investigators said he had assaulted an officer. Protesters marched with their hands up. The stance witnesses say Brown took and chanted. Local officials had planned today to release the name of the officer who's on paid leave.
Are being taken down by mostly plainclothes police officers while being placed under arrest. One of the officers employed a chokehold. Moments later, while on the ground after complaining he couldn't breathe, he was dead.
Yeah, okay, we don't need you to do that.
And the first calls from neighbors reporting a fight.
The guy yelling help. Oh my God.
Hurry up, they're right outside my house.
From what I've heard, there is no eyewitness to it. There's no videotape of it. There may be some audio inferences that we'll see.
And that hits at the heart of this case. It could all hinge on what happened in those missing 80 seconds.
We don't know for certain who approached who. We don't know for certain who provoked it.
Now, Sanford police, Diane, continue to insist that it was Zimmerman who started the fight that night, and that's what the prosecution is going to have to prove in order to win a conviction.
The police the same way. They put their club upside your head and then turn around and accuse you of attacking them. Every case of police brutality against a Negro follows the same pattern. They attack you, bust you all upside your mouth, and then take you to court and charge you with assault. What kind of democracy is that? What kind of freedom is that?
These events that have occurred all relate back to Malcolm X. His fight for equality and self-defense for African Americans was his one goal. He knew he wasn't going to achieve it in his lifetime, but had hoped after all his messages were said that they would understand and it would be done. What if he were still alive today? Would he make a change?